Thank you so much for joining today for our latest YouTube Live. This is a little bit of a new audio setup that we're trying, so if you can't hear for some reason, please let me know right away, and then I'll switch back to our normal computer speakers. But thank you so much for taking the time to join us. If this is our first time meeting, my name is Jonathan Roberts. I'm the director here at the South Shore Piano School. If you've come to know us mainly through our YouTube channel, we are an actual music school in Quincy, Massachusetts, just south of Boston. And our mission as a music school is to really work to make what can be a very complicated process of learning the piano, especially in this day and age, much more accessible, simple, fun, manageable. You name it, we will go above and beyond to try to make it as fun as possible for you, whether you're a student of ours right now or if you're just encountering us for the first time. So today's workshop is going to be focused on improving your note reading at the piano. And if you're just joining us, drop in the comments, let us know where you're from, where you are in your music journey. I'd like to make this as interactive as we can so that we can kind of tweak what we do to tailor it to your specific needs. That's one of the great things about YouTube Live. So I'm going to switch cameras here. And again, if anybody could confirm in the chat that you can actually hear me okay, and that you can hear that okay, that would be super, super helpful. I think I have all my settings set up properly. And yeah, let's just dive right in to staff reading. And what I want to do is structure this. Oh, thank you, Gretchen. Thank you for the confirmation there. So I want to structure this so that we're literally going from the ground up. So that way, if you're maybe a parent, if you're somebody with literally zero music experience, this is for you. If you're somebody who has some music experience and this is something that you want to brush up on, this is also for you. We're basically going to go from the very beginning all the way through, having a roadmap where you can confidently really tackle this note reading thing on the grand staff. So let's dive in. I'm going to change my screen and I'll show you this fun game later. I just completed the grand challenge while I was waiting. This is some fun music I'm working on now. We're not going to do that today, sorry. And we're not going to do that either. Let's find my blank one. Here we go. This is from a rhythm tutorial I did the other day. And actually, you know what? Let me switch over to, let's go to this one. All right, welcome to the universe of the grand staff. And like I said, we're just going to go from the very, very, very beginning. So this is a staff. Any musical instrument uses a staff, whether it's flute players, saxophone players, bass players, you name it. Everybody uses a staff. So a staff is just simply a set of lines that represent musical pitches. And we can have notes that are on lines like this. See if that's showing up there, very good. And we can also have notes that are in the spaces in between the lines. And then if we have notes that are a little too high or a little too low to fit on the staff, then we just add extra lines. So that's above, here's below, you get the idea. So that's essentially what a staff is. And no matter what a note actually looks like, you're just going to pay attention to the note head. That's what tells us what the actual pitch is. So for example, this, or this, 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 all the same note. What the note looks like tells us what the rhythm is going to be. So when we're going to play the note, how long we're going to play the note, that sort of thing. So we always want to be focused on the note head when we are reading music. So that's the sort of textbook definition of what a staff is. But for any staff, we need to have what's called a clef. A clef is sort of like a roadmap that tells us which notes the staff actually represents. And so with the grand staff, which we use for the piano, because the piano is such a big instrument, 88 keys, we actually end up using two staffs. So we have treble clef. And usually instruments that have a higher range, like flute players, saxophone players, clarinet players, they'll just have the treble staff because they don't have as many notes as we do. And then the bass clef, that represents lower ranges. So you'll see a bass clef with cellos, trombones, anything with a very low pitch will usually use the bass clef. And again, since we're playing the piano, we're using both of these and they're braced together into what's called the grand staff so that we can encompass all of these notes. Plus we have two hands, so why not have two staffs? That doesn't mean this might, that doesn't mean it won't change on occasion. Sometimes we might have, say, two treble clefs if both of our hands are going to be playing up here in this higher range. Sometimes it might be the other way around. Sometimes we might have two bass clefs, and that's when both hands are going to be down here in the lower range of the piano. So I'd like to start with sort of covering how this is traditionally taught and why the way I'm going to teach you is much better than that. So just to go through this very quickly, most of you have probably experienced this at some point if you've been in any elementary school music class. But the treble clef, a lot of drop it in the chat if you've come across this in life somewhere. So we have the lines that go E, G, B, D, F. We have the spaces that spell face. And then we have the lines in the bass clef, something like good boys do fine always. And then in the spaces, we have all cows eat grass. So we have these mnemonics to help us remember the notes, right? But there are a couple problems with this. First, I mean, even when you go through this, it's a little anxiety producing, right? Like, all right, every good boy does fine. Face, good boys do fine always, and all cows eat grass. All right, you know your grand staff. Doesn't quite work like that. So first of all, it's remembering 4 different sayings for 2 identical staffs. And then the second problem with that is even if you know this, all these mnemonics and things like that, this doesn't tell you which octave it's in. So you might think what we often see with students is they'll say like, all right, every good boy does fine, F. They'll remember that it's an F, but they might play like this or that when it's very specifically this F. So usually when students are playing things in the wrong octave frequently, this is sort of a sign that they've learned staff reading like this. Second thing we see a lot, I'm just going to pull up just a random piece of music. We'll try Firefly from Piano Adventures Level 1. Whoops. Oh, you know what? Why not go with this? We always sort of, as teachers, get a little anxious when a student comes in that has had lessons before and we see this in their music. Letter names. And it's the same symptom ends up happening. So one, they don't really learn to read music fluently, and then they end up playing the notes in the wrong octave. And especially if they go on like that for a long time, it's we'll open like a Clementi sonatina and it's just scribbled with letter names everywhere. It's like in the thriller movies when they find the serial killer's hideout and there's like all this newspaper clippings everywhere. That's how we feel when we see that in a transfer student's music, the letters everywhere. So we absolutely want to avoid this as well. I'm going to show you a better way. And there are a couple of reasons for this. Like I said, students will play the notes in the wrong octave. They won't actually learn the notes as they are in the staff because they'll end up relying on these letters that are all kind of scribbled in. And then there's also the practical matter of we don't really use the letters that much actively when we're actually playing. Like if I'm playing, I'm not thinking, D sharp, E, C, E, C, E, C, E, C, E, see what I mean? So as I'm going to show you, when we're actively playing, we don't really use the letters that much, but rather we're reading the music by shape and by contour. And we're going to go through all of this. So this is new territory for you. Just sit tight. I think this will be really eye-opening for your staff reading journey. So I'm going to pull up the grand staff once more. Here we are. So rather than going through all these mnemonics or doing any of this stuff, what we're going to do is a system that is often referred to as the landmark system or the pointer note system. And what that means is rather than sort of pressuring ourselves to try to remember all of these notes at once, which isn't going to be that fun, although it is worthwhile over time, of course, but especially when we're first getting started, it's not particularly practical. Instead, we're going to memorize, we're going to burn into our brain 5 notes. And those notes are going to serve as our guideposts to find any note on the staff that we want. And there are some little tricks that'll help you remember these as well. So you're not going, totally on your own here. So these 5 landmark notes that we're going to talk about are middle C, which is right here. I think most people know where middle C is. Now my camera is a little offset, but just know that this is my middle C on my piano. So the C that's right in front of the name on the piano. And then we have what's often called treble G. We have bass F, and then we have treble C and bass C. I'm going to go back and go through these one at a time to show you the little tricks that can help you with this. Middle C is usually pretty easy to remember because incidentally it looks pretty much identical, whether it's in the treble clef or it's in the bass clef. It has a line through it, stands out. A lot of method books usually start with this, probably for that reason. So for most people, middle C just kind of sticks out on its own. We don't have to go through this huge process to remember that. And then next we have what's often referred to as treble G. So that's the second line on the treble clef. And what helps you with that is that the nickname for this clef, the treble clef, is the G clef. And you can kind of remember it because it kind of looks like a really fancy G right here, right? So this line that goes through the swiggle there, that's going to be your G line. And that's G right next to the middle C. And then going the other way, you can probably guess the trick that'll help you here. This note down here is often referred to as bass F. It's an F in the bass clef right here, because this clef right here, the bass clef, the other nickname for that is the F clef. So if you can just remember G clef for the top one, F clef for the bottom one, with the F clef, the line that goes between these two dots, that's going to be your F right below middle C. So we have middle C, G clef that helps you remember this G, and then F clef that helps you remember this F below the middle C. And then we have 2 more. We have treble C and bass C. Those are going to be right here. And the tricks that help you with this aren't quite as obvious as the other ones because we don't have something quite as blatant as the clef to help us out. But if you notice here, the treble C, 1, 2, 3 spaces up, going from the bottom. And then we have the bass C, that's 3 spaces going down. So if we were to sort of fold the staff, it would be perfectly symmetrical. So if you can just remember that the C's form this nice symmetry, that can help you remember that those are the 2 C's on either side of the middle C. So in fact, we could just fold this thing over on itself and it would be symmetrical. However, the F and the G obviously are not the same pitch, but the C's are. So we have middle C, treble G, bass F, and then the 2 C's. If this is helpful, please do let me know in the chat. If you're just joining us, welcome. I do like to try to make this as interactive as we can while we're live streaming. So again, if you have any questions as we go, if anything's unclear, or if you have any specific challenges, please do drop it in the chat, and I'd be happy to cover that today. So we've got these 5 landmarks. We have C, G, middle C, F, and bass C. And I'll show you some tools that you can use to practice this at home to get really familiar with it in a fun and engaging way, of course. But we're going to put a pin in this landmark concept for just a moment so that we can talk about intervals. For a lot of students, when we talk about intervals, they're hearing about it for the first time. Not our students, of course, but I'm referring to students who come to us from a variety of places. So an interval is really key to being able to read music on the grand staff fluently. An interval is a fancy word for the distance between notes. And you're probably already using intervals, even if you don't realize it. We're just putting a term to that now. So I'll show you an example of that. So let's see, I'll put this off to the side for now. Fun tricks I learned during COVID. Okay, so let's say we have a note going from here, and I'll just use note heads for now. So let's say we have these 4 notes, right? So when we play this, we're not going to think G, A, B, C, but we're going to think G, that's our starting note. But then we know from our intervals that the distance from a line note, so when a note has a line going through it on the staff, we'll usually refer to that as a line note. A note that goes from a line to the very next space, we're going to call that a step. And then an even fancier term for that would be a second. So with intervals, you basically take the two notes, like let's say, these two notes, C and E, you count from the bottom note to the top note, 1, 2, 3, we'd call that a third. Or if we took, say, C to G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we would call that a fifth. So steps and skips, those are the only intervals that we have fancy nicknames for. The sort of official definition is more seconds and thirds. And then once we go bigger than that, we have to use the number term fourths, fifths, sixths, and stuff like that. So what's kind of fun with this is, say a student is struggling with, bass clef reading, and they haven't tried intervals before, we go over the landmarks, and we have, do you remember that one? Bass C, okay, C below the middle C. And let's say we have step up, step up, step up, step down, step up, step up. I'll just tell them to follow the steps up and down. And of course, up is to the right, down is to the left. And they just think bass C, up a step, up a step, up a step, down a step, up a step, up a step. And we'll say, hey, you didn't know most of these notes in the bass clef, but you just played every single one correctly. And that's pretty cool. So just to dig a little deeper into this concept of intervals, and then we'll circle back to the landmark note concept. Like let's say you have this note going to this note. So the way we measure that is basically counting from the bottom note to the top. In this case, we'd start on this line note, 1, space is 2, the line is 3, the space is 4, the line is 5. So we'd call that interval a fifth. And then just looking at it a little broader, we know that a fifth goes from a line note to a line note with a line in between, or it can go from a space note to a space note with a space in between. Or you could also think of it as two skips. Skip, skip, or 2/3. It doesn't make a sixth, of course, because we have the overlapping note, but from there to there, that would be a fifth. So as you get better at recognizing intervals, you're going to find it's so much easier, like ridiculously easier, to read music. I had an adult student not too long ago who took lessons as a kid, didn't have a fantastic experience because he really struggled with the reading elements. And then as soon as we talked about this interval concept, it's like everything clicked. And all of a sudden he was learning music faster than ever. So I'll show you an example. Let's actually circle back to, or actually before we do that, let's go back to landmarks so I can show you how the intervals tie in. I have to redraw that, my apologies. So we have middle C, treble G, treble C, bass F, bass C. So keeping in mind that you're going to try to keep this sort of burned into your memory, okay? Practice writing them. I'm going to show you a really cool app that you can use for this. But what you can do is use these landmarks as your sort of guideposts to find any other note, like literally any other note on the staff. So like, let's say you're playing and you're stumped on this note right here. So we don't know that note, but we do know this note. That's a C. And then you just measure the distance from the note you know to the note that you don't know. So we have treble C, and this is just up a skip. Or if you need to count the steps, you can do that. Step up, and there's our mystery note. And then as we're playing, we're going to actively use the intervals as we play. So let me show you a couple examples, and I didn't prepare specific examples, so I'm just going to literally draw on some random things from my PDF reader. Oh, we're not going to do that one. Here, let's try this one. So starting note just happens to be a landmark, so that's exciting. And again, we're going to resist any temptation to play G, G, E, F, F, D, E, E, C, E, because we're going to focus on intervals rather than letters. So if we're playing this, we look at the first note. All right, it's a treble G landmark. And we just look at the intervals from left to right. I'll try to zoom in on this. So from here to here, same note. And then as we go down, it's line to line. So that would be a skip. We go up a step, same note, down a skip, up a step, same note, down a skip, up a skip. Does it make sense? And if you've never tried this before, I encourage you to take a look at your music and give this a try, because it really does open up a lot of doors here, because we're not really worrying so much about every single letter. We're actually looking at the contour. So as I'm playing this tune, it'll be G, same, skip down, or third down, step up, same note, skip down, up a step, same, down a skip, up a skip, down a step, same note. Now left hand, it's not a landmark, right? So this is going to be an example of how you can use those landmarks to find a note that you're not sure about, because if you know these two landmarks in the left hand, or these three we could say, really well, then you know this is F, and this is just one step up from that. So that's going to be G. And then same concept here. And actually here we're going back and forth. So the question might be, okay, well, how do we use intervals here? It's the same idea. We're reading from left to right. We can see the left hand is just playing this G again and again and again. And if we follow the intervals in the right hand, you can see that we're just going up by steps. So it'll be middle C, G we just figured out, step up, back to the G, step up, back to the G, step up, back to the G, step up, step down, step down, step down. Let's see if I can, find another example. Okay, this one's a little harder, but we'll go through the same process. So starts on a landmark note or not on a landmark note? If anybody wants to drop in the chat. So the answer is no, it is not a landmark note. So the closest landmark to this guy is going to be that G. Or if you want, you could use the middle C. I find that students have a little bit harder of a time with the middle C because you have to sort of imagine that it's there because it has its own line that we put through it. So again, we'll go from that G. We measure the interval from there to the mystery note. So that's a skip down. All right, so we found our starting note, E. And then from here, we look and see where our left hand starts. That's here. Again, not a landmark note. This is one where middle C would certainly be helpful because you just see middle C. There's my middle C, and this is just down one step. So that's going to be B, starting note in the left hand. Or if the middle C is a little troubling, you could just start from the F and then count up the steps until you get to the B. Middle C is a little easier just because it's closer. But again, if you, as a first step, especially if you kind of struggle with grand staff reading, a first step is definitely to really work to get these landmarks really, really burned into your brain so that you can see them instantly and use those as reference points to find any mystery notes. So again, as we read this, we're just going to follow the intervals. So we start with E. And actually, let me see if I can, I'll be playing with the incorrect hand, but just to sort of see where my vision's going. So we start with E, we see a third up or skip up, same, skip down, step up, skip down, step down, left hand on B that we figured out, back to right hand, middle C, skip up, looking across, same note, skip down, step, and then left hand's turn, step down, step down. But you see, that's so much easier, right, than trying to approach this as E, G, F, D, C, B. I often think that the letters are almost more of a way to just refer to the notes in sort of a theoretical way. Like if I have to say, here, start on that F, I have something I can call it. But it's more associating the notes on the page with a key or a sound at the piano. Okay, so in the chat, please let me know if this makes sense. I'd be curious if this is new for anybody joining us today. And if you're just joining us, welcome. We're in the midst of demystifying everything about grand staff reading. If you're here live, obviously you're here live because right now I'm live. Do feel free to drop any questions in the chat. We'll have some time for Q&A. Or if you're watching the replay, do feel free to put anything in the comments. So next we're going to talk about ledger lines because we have 88 keys on the piano. It's a magnificent instrument. But even with the grand staff, if we stick with the lines and spaces we have, that doesn't nearly cover all the notes that we might be able to play. So I'm going to show you another trick that you can use to practice ledger lines, and I'm going to explain what ledger lines are. Whoops, let's try. I need to start naming my files better. Whoops, definitely not the right one. All right, here we go. So a ledger line is a fancy word for just extra lines that we add when the notes go too high or too low to fit on the staff. And it works like this. Let's say I'm starting on my landmark treble C. So that's a space note. If I go up a step, that's a line note. Up another step is a space. Another step is a line. Another step is a space. But now if I keep going, if I didn't add any extra lines, it's kind of unclear what note I'm supposed to play. So the way this works, and sometimes it can actually be worthwhile to practice writing this on staff paper. So if we're on a space and we need to go up another one, that's going to be a line note. So we're going to add a ledger line. So it's just sort of a little mini line here, and that will be the next step up. Now, if we keep going, we're not going to add an extra line just yet, but the note's going to sit on top of the line like that. And then if we keep going, now we add another line because the next one will be a line note, right? If we keep going up by step, so line note. If I keep going, the next one will be in the space. If I keep going, the next one will be in the line, etc. Usually good additions or thoughtful composers or writers will, once we're getting past like 3 or 4 ledger lines, they'll usually put an 8 VA mark over it, which is just shorthand for play an octave higher than what you're seeing written, just because once even for me, like I don't have this memorized once it gets to like that many ledger lines. So I will resort to counting up or down usually. But I'm going to show you a trick that you can use that'll help demystify a lot of the ledger line conundrums, especially on the outsides of the staff as we're getting really high and we're getting really low. And it goes like this. And it's actually kind of cool because if you remember our treble C and our bass C, how those are symmetrical, it's actually the same thing with the next set of C's. This is, yep, I'm in the camera, fortunately. So high C and low C are going to be 2 ledger lines above and 2 ledger lines below. So that would be here and here. Now, this is admittedly a little trickier just because we don't have the long continuous line that we can use to help us find other notes, but it's still the same concept where if you can just really, really, really memorize that two lines above is high C, 2 lines below is low C, so that's 2 C's away from the middle C, then you can use that as a reference point to find most ledger lines that you'll have to in the music that you're playing. Just to show you a couple examples, let's say you have to figure out this super high note here, right? So we're in the treble clef. If you know that second line, that's your high C, this is just a skip up and another skip up, also known as a fifth. So that would be a very high G. An example on the lower side, let's say you have a note that's 3 lines down in the bass clef. That means that this guy here, second line, that's going to be the low C. So that's 2 C's below middle C. If you have that burned into your brain, you just know that a line to a line, that's a skip. So this would be a very low A. And I just have that in the shot, didn't get cut off. So in the big scheme of things, if as a first goal, and you could do this in a matter of just a couple weeks, if you can memorize this, 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 and then the high C and the low C, each one with its little tricks. Even if you just went 1 step away from each of these, I'm just going to sketch out everything that's 1 step up or down from each of these. So we have this, these two, these two, these two, these two. I think you get the point as it's filling up. If you just know those notes and can find their neighbors, that's like most of the staff right there. So as a first goal, especially if this is something that's been a challenge for you, start with memorizing these landmarks. I'm going to show you a couple fun ways that you can do that shortly. And then the second thing is get extraordinarily familiar with steps and skips. Even though it seems like it should be pretty straightforward, just line to a space or space to space or line to space. For some people get it a little easier than others. One's not better than the other. But the reality is that most melodies in music will use lots of steps and skips. So if you can master those 2 intervals, seconds and thirds, that's like 70% of the melodies that you'll play. And then even when you have bigger intervals, you can use those smaller intervals as stepping stones. For example, say you have a note going from here to here. Obviously, it's not a second or a third, but if you just think, all right, so I'm here, skip, 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 that's a 7th. So as you can see, you can use those smaller intervals as stepping stones to help you get there. Okay, so let's talk about a few ways you can practice this. One way you can practice this is to just, actually, I'm going to show you our sort of go-to app that we use for students for this. It's called Note Rush. I don't think we have a link in the description just yet, but this, if you make one technological investment in your staff reading journey, this will be the best one. I think for years, I think piano teachers pined for a good app to help with note reading, because flashcards can be okay, but I'll tell you what the challenge is with flashcards. It kind of hinges on you having another person to do it with you, or if you're a parent watching this to help your kids. First of all, congratulations on being an awesome parent. But if you're a parent doing this with your kids, you basically have to be involved in the process, because what will often happen, especially with younger kids like 6, 7, 8, when they're using flashcards, they'll pull up a flashcard and they'll think like, okay, G, and they'll turn it over and it's definitely not a G. They got it wrong, and then they'll say, oh, okay, got it right. So it requires several steps and several layers of participation. So for a long time, I think piano teachers really wanted something that could, with just a student and the piece of technology, in this case an iPad, where it could actually like hear you and tell you if you played the notes right. So this app, Note Rush, this is our favorite. It's it's about the same price as a deck of flashcards. It'll serve you way better, and I'll show you a couple of different ways that you can use it. You have preset levels. I don't necessarily recommend this to start with, but you certainly can. When you pick a level, it just shows you the notes that it's going to quiz you on. I'll just show you a quick round on the starter level. This is just every single note from G down to F. And if I get it wrong, I get dinged. And every time I get dinged, I lose 5 seconds. And then it's a speed challenge. And I got 2 stars. Once you get a certain speed under your belt, it upgrades to 5 stars. So it has kind of a cool time challenge element to it. But in terms of using this to help you with your landmarks, I'm going to show you a different way to use the app. This was a feature they added a few years ago. It's my favorite. It's called the Level Designer. So to do that, you go to the top, you hit Level Designer, and then we'll just do a new level. Make sure you hit Grand Staff. And then once you're here, you can literally tell it which notes you want it to quiz you on. So you can kind of create your own little curriculum here with the app. And just a side note, we're not like making any money from Note Rush for this video or something. We just really, really like it. So in case anybody was wondering. So like, let's say after this live stream, you want to just like really pound in these landmark intervals we talked about. All you have to do is select those notes. So we'll do middle C in both hands, G, C, F, C. You set the number of repetitions, so that's basically the number of times you want it to quiz you on all of these things. We'll say 2 reps for now. You name it, we'll just call this the YouTube Live. And then this time, instead of quizzing me on this sort of pre-created range of notes, it's just going to quiz me on the ones that I want to be quizzed on. So let's try it. Did we make 5? All right, we made 5 stars. Awesome. It's good to know my work has paid off. So I'm just noticing a question we have here in the chat from Gretchen. So when you're reading music, do you think in terms of steps and skips instead of learning the note if you're stuck? Really, really good question. So if you're totally stuck in the middle of a piece and you're like, I have no idea what note that is, you could approach it both ways. For me personally, I've just been doing this for so long, I see a note and I know exactly where it is. An exception to that might be if it's a piece of music that has, a million ledger lines and I have to like sort of count my way all the way up. But really, really, really good question. But in general, when I read music, I don't really think in letters. I might think in terms of keys, which we have a couple other videos on that topic, and chords and things like that. But I'm not thinking, C, E, G, A, B sharp, things like that. So coming back to this, what you can do that's really cool is you can, again, sort of create your own set of steps. So once you master this set of landmark notes, you can add, say, the high C and the low C. And then once you've mastered that, you can add the neighbors. Or conversely, if you're struggling with certain notes, what you could do is just focus on those. So for example, say you're really having a hard time with, the neighbors around, or no, say you're having trouble with the 3 C's, you could just highlight those 3 C's and just practice those and drill those and then add back in. So that's Note Rush. I'll include a link to that in the comment and in the description, so you can check that out. But your first task, as I said, would be to really, really get to know these landmark notes and then get super familiar with steps and skips. And then just to wrap up, I'll open it up to any other questions, but I realized I didn't mention sharps and flats, which is also really important. And I'm going to show you how I usually teach students to read those in the context of intervals. So like, let's say we have a string of notes that go G, and then we go up a step, up a step. We'll say up a, we'll go up to C sharp, and then up a step like this. A couple things to note, especially if this is something like this is a little unfamiliar, is the direction of the stems have nothing to do with what the note is. It's always going to be wherever that note head is, the line or the space, that's going to determine the note. So when you're reading intervals, that's what you want to focus on. And then what the note actually looks like, that's going to be a rhythm thing. And if you want to learn more about rhythm, we're going to do another YouTube Live tomorrow that's all about that topic, same time. Tomorrow, Tuesday, November 12th. I can't believe it's already November. But for something like this, I'll usually tell people to do the same thing, where they read steps, also known as seconds, but then sort of add in the sharp. So in this case, we do G, up a step, up a step, up a step with a sharp, and then up another step. Or something that'll often happen sometimes is, let's say we had a flat here. And just a quick aside, if you're not familiar with sharps or flats, a sharp means we go a half step up this way. So like G, G sharp. A flat is going a half step down, so G, G flat. So say we have a set of notes that looks like this. Same concept, starting on G, up a step with a flat, up a step, up a step. But what a lot of students will do is they'll do G, up a step, and then they'll do this, which isn't quite correct. So one way to sort of practice this, if this is something that happens with you or it happens with your kids, if you're a parent watching this, is you can temporarily, actually here, I'll use this. You can temporarily sort of get rid of the flat and then just play the notes without the flat. And then add the flat back in, but keeping everything else the same. So that I find is the easiest way to sort of navigate the sharps and the flats in the context of intervals. But do just let me know if you have any questions about that in the comments below. Okay, so with that, I'm going to switch my camera for a moment. And I will open it up to, we don't have too many people here live right now, but I'd love to open it up to any questions. If anybody has questions about any of this stuff, if anything didn't make sense, if this is new for you, or even just sort of where you are in your music journey. It's always kind of fun to see where people are and where they're coming from and things like that. And then we'll launch our Kahoot game. And then I also just wanted to say, if you found this helpful, we would so appreciate it if you might consider leaving us a Google review. And this is a new thing I tried today. There's a QR code here. If you happen to have a phone handy or another device, maybe you're watching this on your computer or TV, if you just point your phone at this QR code, it'll take you directly to our review page if you want to leave us a review, or even if you just give it a couple taps to leave us a review. Every little bit helps to sort of help our visibility on Google. Or if you want to go to the description, there's a link there as well. So it's just an easy, free way you can help support us so we can keep providing this free content to you, the viewer. All right, going back to my comments section. Doesn't look like anybody has any comments at the moment. So we only have a handful of people. I'm hoping we have enough that'll be willing to try this Kahoot game that I put together. If you're not familiar with Kahoot, it's basically sort of a gameplay platform where you can play from home. You just need a second device, or if you're on the computer, you just need to open a separate window. So I'll go ahead and get the game started, and we'll just see if we have any players that want to join. And all of the questions will come from the presentation today. Let's see if that works properly. And if sound suddenly starts cutting out, just let me know. So, because again, this is a very experimental setup here. Get rid of that. So basically, you go to kahoot.it, enter this game number, and then you're part of the game. We had a question from Lima. Thanks for joining, Lima. Where can we get the link for the app you used on the iPad? I'm going to put that in the description. It's not there right now, but I will add that right after the live stream. So great question. All right, so again, you go to kahoot.it and enter the game number. If we don't have any players today, that's okay. I'll edit this out of the replay, so we're not too embarrassed that nobody wanted to play. So if you're just joining us, I think I saw somebody just joined us in the live stream. If you want to play our live Kahoot game on a separate device or another window on your computer, go to kahoot.it, enter this game number, and then you can be, and you know, if only one person does it, you automatically win. So that's kind of cool, or it could be kind of cool. Is my sound still coming through, by the way? If somebody could just let me know. This is a totally experimental setup, and I didn't have time to test it. So I think last time we did this, my voice mic cut out. All right, we'll give it about 10 more seconds, and I think we'll call it a day. Oh, we got somebody. All right, so we will do the game. Do we have any challengers for GG? We'll give it like one more minute. Thank you, Kimberly, for the kind comment. Much appreciated. Any challengers? And people can join mid-game as well. All right. I guess it's just going to be GG, the guaranteed winner. But somebody might jump in. We'll see. Let's go ahead and start it. The Grand Staff Note Reading Challenge. Whoops. All right, so question 1 is a quiz, and it's, what is the nickname for this clef? Oh, and you know what? I think my screen seems to have frozen a little bit. Hang on, technical difficulties. I knew something was gonna go weird today. All right, 1 second. So this is gonna go away for a moment. Gretchen is still in the lead. Just going to grab. There we go. All right. If you're curious, I use an app called OBS to do this, and it's wonderful, except sometimes when weird stuff like this happens. So we're just going to get this back in here. Okay, I think we're good. All right, let's continue now. All right, next. Gretchen, of course, in the lead. And there is a bit of a delay here. There's about a 5 to 7 second delay. So just be ready on your device, especially if you join the game. All right, next quiz. What note is this? So this is a landmark note. So remember the name of the clef. Let's see. I'm not sure if we lost Gretchen. She asked, "How do I sign out?" I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you mean Kahoot or the live stream. Oh no! 3 more seconds. 2, 1. Right? All right, let's continue. I think we might have lost Gretchen, and if we did, for the remaining folks playing, we don't have to watch all the questions unless you're enjoying it. True or false? An interval is the distance between 2 notes. True or false? An interval is the distance between 2 notes. All right, I think we might have lost Gretchen. So in that event, I think I think we're probably best to pause it for now. We'll save that for another day. And in the meantime, thank you so much for joining for our live stream. Any feedback, if you're watching the replay, I'd love to hear any comments below. In the meantime, we have a rhythm workshop that we'll do tomorrow at 6 o'clock. So that's Tuesday, November 12th. And with that, happy practicing, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream.